Hi, my name is Vincci. Thank you for joining me for our practice today. And today's yin practice is based around a mantra that I'll be teaching you to help you find some grounding, not only in the actual yin practice, but also something you can take away with you as a tool, especially if you find you're experiencing some stress or you find your mind is very restless. And this is a mantra I want to dedicate to my teacher for teaching me Sarah Powers. And this mantra I find is very helpful to practice, whether it's just repeating it to yourself or you can practice it with your own breath work. So let's start to make sure we have all the props we need for our practice today. If you can grab a towel or blanket, something that might be nice to support yourself when you're kneeling or to place underneath you for any of the poses we're going to be doing today. If you can grab a bolster. Now, if you don't have a bolster, it's okay. Grab a couple of cushions or pillows, the big pillows that you've got at home, and you can wrap some towels around it to give you some of that support and height. And if you can grab a block or two blocks, sometimes they're also quite handy to go into some of the poses. If you don't have blocks, sometimes some lunch boxes with the same thickness as a block is helpful too. And so make sure you've got all the things you need, and we'll come to meet each other sitting back on our mats. And when you find that seat, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. If you find sitting cross-legged doesn't work for you, you can always bring your legs in front and sitting even in the chair if that's more comfortable for you. So as we find our seat, let's begin to arrive. We're going to start with a little bit of breath work, and we're also going to start to learn this mantra. And so as we find our seat, make sure you're comfortable here. If you can, to soften the gaze or even close your eyes now. Hands can rest on your lap if that's what works best. Anything that's comfortable for you. And as we find our seat, let's start to ground the sit bones down. As we sense the parts of ourselves in contact with the earth, let that place start to soften. Finding length through the spine, drawing the tailbone to the earth, letting the crown of the head lengthen away and towards the ceiling. As we begin to practice to watch and observe our breath. And as you begin to observe your breath, what do you notice? Are they the subtle qualities or obvious qualities? You may even hear the sound of your own breath. And does the inhale begin from the nose or the mouth? And where does the breath travel to? And this is a part where we begin to let go of the dialogue, the inner dialogue. Sometimes our own filters of opinion and bias. Letting that soften as we begin to learn to observe without judgment, opinions. And that takes practice. Sometimes we may find this is something quite challenging. But yet, part of this practice is despite all of those things coming through, we continue to practice. And sometimes that will slowly become a little bit easier with time. Then we're going to begin by perhaps taking a few clearing breaths. You might like to take a deep breath in through the nose now. And empty it out. And feel free to take a few more rounds. As you draw the breath in, you might like to even deepen it all the way to the belly. Exhale, possibly even sigh it out through the mouth if you wish. Let it go. And if you feel there's a lot going on for you today, there could be mentally, emotionally, things you feel you've been holding. Do you sense any of that held in your body? As you exhale, let it go, and perhaps letting those physical parts of you to soften. And as we begin to come back to our breath, I'd like you now to listen into the mantra that I'd like to introduce to you. And this mantra is something you can repeat to yourself in 3 phrases. As you inhale, you can say to yourself, let in. As you hold and suspend the breath, you can say to yourself, let be. And as you exhale, repeating to yourself the mantra, let go. Let in, let be, let go. And this mantra, you can coordinate it with your breath, or you could simply say this to yourself in your practice today. As you sit and begin to repeat the mantra, it helps to keep us anchored in this moment. Perhaps you can let in the new breath. Let be as you suspend and hold the breath. As you let go, exhaling, releasing the things you no longer need. And as you continue this practice of repeating this mantra, you may find the mind will start to wander off. You might start to feel distracted, thinking about other things, and that's okay. Because when we start to realize and observe we have been perhaps distracted, that's a really important thing to note, that we've become aware. We're actually aware that we are distracted. And if that is the case, gently guide your awareness back to either the mantra or even come back to your breath, coming in, going out. And we'll come back into this one more round of breath. And in the next few moments, we're going to start to begin to open up our eyes, and we're going to slowly come off our seat. And as part of our practice today in the yin practice, just so in case any of you are experiencing injuries, yin is a practice that we get into the connective tissues, into the joints. There will be some parts of the practice you might feel some discomfort, but you should never feel pain. So if you're going through any injuries today, I want to make sure that you're aware of your own limitations and to find that appropriate edge that suits you. And so for the first pose, let's get into the lower back. We're going to come into this pose to kind of focus into the lower back area. So feel free to take a bolster in front of you. This can be a good way to support your upper body. Now, if you are feeling that you like something underneath your hips to support your hip bones, you're welcome to take a blanket underneath you, especially if at home you're on a hard floor and you like something a little bit softer to lie on. So as you come onto your belly, you can start with bring your hands in front. Hands are about shoulder width apart, so you can come onto your forearms and your hands. Anybody with shoulder injuries today, you can either take your time to widen the shoulders, or you can lower down a little bit first. Anybody with sort of lower back tenderness today, when you come to lying on your belly, you can maybe even engage your glutes, okay, just slightly to protect your lower back. So if everything's okay for you at the moment, make sure your legs are relaxed and the feet about hip width apart. And so as we come onto hands and forearms, you might already start to sense there's a little bit of sensation in the lower back, and that's where we want to get into the lumbar area. We want to start to get into the connective tissue around the lumbar and lower back area. So as we come onto hands and forearms, you can even start to see if it's comfortable for your neck to either bring the chin to the chest. You're welcome to take a cushion, a block, or something to support your forehead even if you like. And some of you might find even more comfortable to take your hands as a tripod option to hold on to your head. So that's another option here. So as you come into your Sphinx pose, give yourself a few moments to settle. And as you start to sense the ground supporting your belly and your front body, take a few moments here to settle back to your breath. Watching the breath here. And if it's helpful, beginning to introduce and include and repeat the mantra to yourself. As you inhale, let in. As you suspend the breath, let be. And as you exhale, let go. And so as we take time to pause here, also become aware of the sensations in the body, that nothing feels overly uncomfortable or hurting. Make sure that in each pose that you're not in any sort of pain, no sharp kind of shooting pain, but rather some dullness sensation. That's quite normal in the yin practice. And in the Sphinx pose, we're getting a little bit focused more into the lower back, especially if you've been sitting for long periods of time, if you're working from home, or even sometimes you're experiencing there's not much movement into the lower back. If you find that, either you've been sitting a long time and you're realizing there's a lot of pressure in the lower back, or those who are spending a lot of time sitting and driving. So this pose also helps to kind of release some of the stagnation in our kidney channel. And when there's an imbalance in that kidney channel, it can create an overwhelming sense of fear. And that's related to the chi. If the chi, as some of you know, also as prana, life force, if things are not flowing freely, it can start to create imbalance in our own health, our immunity, but also in our own emotions and in our thoughts. And so in the next few moments, an option here, if you want to go a little bit deeper, if you want to explore your edge, when you come to that Sphinx pose, you can go either into seal by bringing your hands towards the corners of your mat to take the elbows off. This will raise you higher, but that will be strong into lower back. So feel free to kind of make sure that you're not kind of pushing to a point or you're hurting. You can always come back to Sphinx. Now the bolster, or if you've got a pillow cushion in front of you, another option is sort of somewhere between a Sphinx and seal pose, where you can bring your hands onto the cushion and you can come up higher, but you're not hurting, or pushing too much into the shoulder. So that's another option here. So make sure that when you choose the pose and the shape that works for you, that you're going in it with that sort of compassion and also intelligence, that you're not overhurting with yourself and being aggressive. And so in the next few moments, whichever option you've taken, let yourself settle there. And taking a few more breaths. And there are times when you might find the breath awareness can be your anchor. Some days the mantra is more helpful. And when you feel ready, in the next few breaths, just slowly come out. Say if you're in seal, if you've gone high up, take your time, lower yourself back into Sphinx first, and we'll meet in Sphinx. Now, we're going to take our hands underneath our forehead, let them stack, and let our head rest. So now our spine is nice and neutral. So that rest pose gives us some time to become aware of what's going through the physical sensations of our body, and some really good time for the body to rest. So the chi flows nice and freely through the body, especially in the lower back and the kidney channel. And sometimes you can maybe even experience things can rise to the surface. And so the mind is kind of like boiling water. There's things that bubble up. Sometimes there's a lot of emotions that bubble up, reactions, filters, biases, assumptions. Notice if anything does come up for you in that rest pose. And notice if you react to them, or notice if you start to create an opinion even on those observations. See if you can soften that need to do that. Now, if you like to release the lower back, a few options is you can bend the knees and windscreen wipe the feet to release lower back. Some of you might even want to take a short little child's pose if that feels good to round the spine. So take that time where you need. And in our next few breaths, when you're ready, let's come back up to sitting. And we're going to come into a nice hip opener. Now this one, it's quite good in the way that we get into both the inward and the outward rotation of the hips. Sometimes we do spend a lot more time in the outward rotation. So this one focuses on both. So you can take maybe your towel blanket towards the back of your mat. You can sit just raising the pelvis a little higher. You can take a bolster in front or even a cushion or pillow. We'll start by bring the legs in front, bend your right knee, bring your right heel out. So if your right knee is not feeling so great today, or if you notice that there's a gap between your knee and the floor, so it's not touching the floor, make sure you fill in that gap, okay? Because sometimes we might unconsciously try to push it down and end up injuring ourselves. So as you take the right knee out, option to bring it further away. It could be more intense, especially if you've got a really tight right hip flexor there today. If that's the case, bring the right knee closer towards your left leg. Then with your left leg, bend your left knee, bring your left knee out. So we're going into the outward rotation of the left side. And this is where you're going to start to feel slightly asymmetrical. You're probably feeling like you're leaning more on the right sit bone, and that's how it should be. You're going to feel like this, okay? Now from here, some of you might find option one will be more suitable, which is coming forward. And coming forward, most of us will probably feel it more in that left sit bone and the left glute and the left hip, okay? And make sure that you raise the props to meet you so that you don't force yourself down. So that's option one. Now, option two, some of you might find if it's a right hip flexor that's a little bit tighter today, you can go into rotation. So you can take your right hand onto the left knee, left hand behind, and rotate. So take the option that works best. Sometimes you might want to try both first quickly just to see which one suits. And we're all different. Our bodies are all different. We might be experiencing stresses, different circumstances, different lifestyle. So what you're probably used to doing, if you've done this pose before, the D pose before, and you're used to perhaps going into one variation, you can always try the other one and see. And as you find your way into this shape, take some time here to come back to the breath, making sure you feel comfortable, nothing is hurting. And as you start to find whether it's your breath as your anchor or even the mantra to keep you present, checking in to see if there's any part of you in the physical body that you feel is still tensing. See if you like to invite the next few breaths to soften that place. And one of the fundamentals of principles of yin is we want our muscles to actually relax. We actually want the physical body, the muscles to relax a little bit more each time. And the reason for that being is in order for us to get into the joint side, especially in the hips here in this pose, we want to be able to relax the muscles to get deeper into the fascia, the connective tissue, and the joint side. So that is the purpose, one of the reasons for why we keep talking about relaxing and softening. And sometimes it takes a while. It can be a challenge if we're used to tensing, if we're used to kind of holding, and it's kind of relearning in some way on how to kind of be able to learn to slowly practice to let go. And so in this shape on this side, taking a few more rounds of breaths, allowing in your own time when you feel ready, if you're in your twist, for example, Slowly rotate back. If you've come forward, make sure you take your time to use your hands to walk yourself up. We'll use our hands to guide our legs to come back into the middle. Give it a nice shake. When you feel ready to go to the other side, we'll start by bending the left knee, left heel out. Then bend the right, bring the right knee out. So you can kind of start to change up the modification if you need to. So you probably find the wider the right foot is away from the left thigh, the more intense. So take your time. What you did in the first side may not necessarily be the same. So as you come forward, if you find that's very effective in getting into the right glute, you might find that's the option here for you. Or if you find you want to get more into that left hip, you can take it to your twist. Left hand onto the right knee, right hand behind. And being aware and open to the fact that the shape is not the most primary factor here, because go by the sensations. A lot of the time we get kind of stuck on aesthetics and we want to look a certain way, or we feel if we look a certain way, we've perfected the pose or we're doing it right. So it's really about where do you feel it, and do you feel it in a way that's kind of opening sensation, or if it's more of a sharp shooting pain, then perhaps you might need to modify or pull back a bit. And that's where we start to discover our own appropriate edge. Some days it can feel like 60%, some days we may find it's 70 or 80. But it's really about just staying true to yourself in the way that you're not trying to prove anything to anyone. You just want to start to be able to find the way to open into the pose without forcing. And that sometimes is where the breath connection, it really helps. When we are aggressively pursuing, what happens is our mind stays in that tense, in a very much a tense state. So that's you could say that sympathetic nervous system in a stress state. And when we stay in that mentally, our body can't follow in a relaxed state. So as my teacher Judith Lassiter said, you can't relax and stress at the same time. So if you're trying to relax, you have to relax everything. You have to let the mind soften, and the breath will soften and the body softens. But if one part stays in that stress state, the rest of your body won't go to a relaxed state. And that's where the breath or the mantra is that anchor to help us get there. And as we take a few more breaths in whichever shape you've chosen, taking some time when you feel ready to come out. If you're in your twist, slowly bring yourself back to neutral. If you've come forward, bring yourself back to sitting. Take your time, give yourself just that nice release, and then we're going to prepare for Shavasana. So if you're ready, you can take maybe something behind your head. Feel free to layer up if you're cold, and maybe even a bolster underneath the knees. And as we settle here in our Shavasana, and there's nothing like coming to relaxation at home in your own safety place, your place of security, your place where you feel comfortable and relaxed. And this is the silver lining of this whole time now of isolation, where we get to be at home. We get to be at home, whether it's with our loved ones, with our flatmates, housemates, but it's kind of that time to also have that relationship with yourself, to be able to slow down and to enjoy being with yourself. And sometimes that in itself can be a challenge if we're not used to doing that. So let ourselves now relax onto the mat, making sure you're comfortable, adding some last minute adjustments if you need to. And as we let our eyes close down now, allow the arms to rest in a comfortable position, legs either supported by a bolster or prop, and letting the floor beneath you to hold you. As we feel the earth holding us, You might find it helpful to repeat the mantra if you find the mind is still a bit busy or wandering or distracted. Otherwise, letting the breath to become your anchor. As you take in each breath, feeling yourself sinking a little bit deeper towards the earth. And in your Shavasana today, I'll just be playing a little bit of the sing bowl, letting the vibration of the sound to reverberate through your energetic body. The sound of the bowl is simply an awareness to slowly keep you coming back in your own time, back into the room. But that doesn't mean you have to rush up and get up from your Shavasana. You can simply continue to stay as long as you like. And so I will leave it with you to decide when you like to come out in your own time. But for now, just want to thank you for joining us for our yin practice today. And hopefully this mantra that we guided you through today will be helpful for any times that you feel you need some grounding or some resetting. Thanks so much for sharing the practice with me today, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Namaste.